Welcome. I'm Geoff Hinsley, and I'm joined by my colleague Kathleen Curran in Texas. And we are going to talk for a few moments about what we've been developing in leadership development and leadership training, etc. Have you got anything to add to that quickly, Kathleen, before we get into it?
Well, I think in getting into something like IDKN, the first question is always, how do we start?
Yes.
And the answer is, I don't know. And that's what I don't know-ness is. I don't know where to start. Why? Why don't I know where to start? I know what to say. I know the content, but I don't know. And that's what we're about.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems kind of, in a way, a bit trite, well, I don't know, well, find out or whatever. But the point is with the whole process is directly mappable onto what leaders do when they don't know what to do. And so we'll get into that a little bit. And we do that with that kind of bit of training and some coaching and raising the awareness of the participant or participants. And being coaches with our stock in trade, if you like, is largely questions. And I'm tempted to say to an audience, the first question might be, who here is a leader and or considers themselves a leader? And I think a lot of people put their hands up, but the next part of this is, well, what would it be like if you were all leaders and you were leading all the time? What might that lead to? And so my guess is that you would be noticed by other people, and you would be giving them conscious or unconscious cues, permissions, examples of how you're behaving and how they might behave, which means ultimately you could map that onto, the culture that you're creating. And as I know you love to say, Kathleen, what about culture?
No, the always attributed to Peter Drucker, who apparently really never said it, is that strategy eats culture for breakfast. No. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. But I always extend that because culture is sort of the way we do things around here.
Yeah.
And I think in leadership, it is more the immediate climate that anyone has more control over. It's like the temperature in the room, is it sunny, is it warm, is it cold, is it are the chairs stiff or are they very comfortable and inviting? And that immediate climate is what we feel. And that makes us behave a certain way. If we want a climate that is one that gives the freedom to say, I don't know, and think, well, that's very cool. I'm glad you don't know because that raises a question and we can go to a space of more creativity, then that's a nice climate that we can actually have influence over. When that grows, when more and more and more have that same climate and we have our organizational warming, not just climate warming, and then that becomes the culture. So we all experience that. We know what it feels like when a place is like, I feel like I can breathe here. I don't feel like I'm walking on eggshells or have to worry. So I think there's like the idea that there's a strategy, our goals and our actions of how we will achieve what we set out to achieve. But then we say, well, you can have the greatest strategy you want, but if the culture doesn't support it, and if the climate produces people who are really disgruntled or not connected with that strategy at all, no alignment, it totally eats culture. It totally eats strategy for breakfast and lunch, dinner.
Yes, and the barbecue. So I mean, I love that phrase that you just came up with, the organizational warming. Was that what you said? Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Well, you
that,
think of global warming, but let's make
yeah,
it to our
yeah,
context that
but
we're talking
but in a
about.
slightly more positive way. I mean, I think we need to put that in our dictionary of things like, we have a whole vocabulary with this, like validity vector, um, swamps and mud and all sorts of, cliff face and all sorts of stuff that we've got within the IDKN landscape. So that was a great one. Thank you for that. So I was thinking, if I had a crystal ball that was accurate and reliable and everything else, and I could lend it to you, dear leader, would you like it? And I suspect the answer might be yes, if it were true. Um, and and why would that be? Well, if you need a crystal ball, it kind of de facto means that you have a worry about what might be coming. So you will have naturally an area of not knowing. You will be in a certain area of I don't knownness. Now, whether that's a chronic or an acute thing, whether it's something that you're worried about over the years or weeks or months or days, or whether it's kind of a sudden thing that's walked through the door and there's a big problem coming up and you don't instantly know what the answer is. One of the premises that we have in IDKN is about what you do, how you react or respond in that moment will have a profound effect on the outcome that you'll get at the end of the day. And if you understand that and have it in your mind and you practice it, then the leadership becomes a whole different ball game because you can understand a great deal more about it. So, any comments on that, Kathleen?
Well, this comes up a lot, and I think one of the things that's important for us to distinguish is the meaning of leader, leading, and leadership. Because a leader is a person in a particular role or position, and it doesn't even have anything to do with how well that person fulfills the responsibilities of that position. In fact, if you think about it as a position, well, I don't know how many people actually have leader on their business card. They might have manager, so they are managing things, controlling them, organizing, coordinating, but nobody's a leader on a business card. So the leader is really only nominated, if you will, by others as this person is in charge, and it's questionable. So leading, though, when it's ing, so somebody is leading. So that means it's a process. It's not a 1, 2, 3 process, but it is a dynamic action, constellation of actions that when you are leading, what are you doing when you're leading? It doesn't mean you're in the front of the line and, hacking away at the jungle. You're leading through a group, but rather you're doing something that is going to support, align, inspire, set the direction in the classic definition of leadership. So that it brings you to distinguish to leadership, which is a practice. And that means that's how we're saying we can use this. I don't know. Oh, I would love to have a crystal ball. It's not that I necessarily ever believe it would be great if I knew what the future looked like and the crystal ball could tell me, because then I would know what I should be doing in leading my organization, my team, my group in a certain direction. But more realistically is it gives you some, well, think about a crystal ball. When you look at it, it's generally very distorted, right? Because it's not
Yes.
accurate.
Yeah.
So you're trying to see the future, but you can't really specifically. You're thinking the crystal ball can tell you something, but it's like crystal ball is AI. It can tell you something, but do you believe it? Is it accurate? Where did it learn that from? It learned it from whatever we have fed it thus far, and kind of tried to do, some learning of it along the way, but the sources are us anyway. So to to think it can tell us the answer is really a wish and not realistic, but rather to know that you don't know is where the power lies. And
Yeah,
so
because I
we
guess you can
say,
become
I don't,
creative
well,
and
yeah, we
curious.
say, I don't know. Daniel Goleman, I always cite, says, I don't know, or uncertainty. Uncertainty from not knowing is a sign and symptom of learning. And if there's
Mm,
anything that future proofs us, it's the attitude towards learning to say, I don't know. And well, let's see. It's not that I have to know how to figure out what I don't know.
yeah, yeah,
So it's that preparation. And so what we're saying is when you can identify that I don't know, it's like, wait, it's not a personal reflection of a deficiency. It's more a signal that you're needing to learn something.
yes, yeah, and of course, becoming more creative and curious. Your favorite word, curiosity, and it. I think there's the other edge of that sword, of course, is that if you are in a culture or a situation where you think you're expected to know, or you think that you might look deficient in some way or other, or your ego is likely to be dented, then it becomes a potential problem because you'll go into reaction. And we call this, we have a trigger point where you might suddenly realize you don't know and go into some reaction. And we generally call that the mud because we have this landscape that we've created, which helps you work out where you are in the melee of this leading and leadership in the situations in which you may find yourself. Um, so, and we have a story about that to illustrate that, which we may or may not come up with and repeat in a couple of minutes. But um, the challenge is can you, when you are in I don't know this, work out how to respond in a way that gets a win all round? Or, are you surrounded by other people who will tear you down and you have to fight your way through it? Or are you in a culture that will go, great, I'm so glad you said you don't know. I don't know either. It's a bigger problem than we thought. Let's all pull in the teams and get into what you like to call a sandbox, which is a safe space to have crazy ideas that you can build up, knock down, build up, knock down until you come up with something that is actually by consensus a really good plan and possibly something that nobody really had considered in the first place.
Yeah, it's this place we're talking about the mud. I first experienced when I was writing my dissertation and couldn't find what I was trying to say.
Mm,
And and the solution is always, oh, just write, it comes.
mm,
But when you don't even know what to write, it's really hard to even get started. And I realized though that that's just part of the process. That's, you have to be in the mud.
yeah,
You have to.
yeah.
This is where things get that they're nourished. And in
Yes.
fact, I've even just heard a very interesting phrase from Taoism. When we don't know, and where a colleague of mine shared this with me, we don't know, and we're so eager to get on with it that we react because I just want action. I don't like this feeling. I just want to make it go away. Take this off my plate. I can either ignore it and pretend I never saw that email asking for something I don't know, or I can push it down the road and avoid answering it. Many reactions to make it go away.
Yes.
But she told me there is one phrase that says, nourish while waiting.
Aha.
So when you think about that, we talk about when you get triggered to pause, to
Yes.
get your bearings. How deep in the mud are you and why are you there? And I thought this was another nice way of saying nourish while waiting. So you're not just when is it going away? You're not just waiting, doing nothing.
Yeah.
You are actually nourishing by finding out, why do I feel this way? Is this
Yes.
made up? Is
Yeah.
this real? What might I need to get out of the mud? What support and so on. So nurse while waiting, I think, is a nice way of saying pause.
Yes. Yeah.
Use
We,
pause.
we like to call it getting into the garden of the power of the pause, because it gives you an essence of, okay, I'm in a safe space surrounded by beautiful flowers, whatever, and you can dry up from being in the mud of the area that we've been in. And there was something else that you mentioned that got me thinking. Yes, if you are triggered with something and you go into reaction, are you more likely to try and resolve the tension of that emotion in favor of settling down the emotion rather than the actual problem that came up in the first place? So, that's where panic comes from. It's kind of, we can get scared. We try and run away to resolve the fear that's come up. Or we get angry, we attack people, or we scheme and strategize, but not to, it's actually to resolve the issue of not what we don't know about, right? Not that, it's to resolve the issue of our the pain, if you like, of this
Yeah,
emotion, rather
it's
than the problem.
self-protection.
Yeah, exactly. Which is
Yeah.
why we then also have, after the Garden of the Power of the Pause, we have our Cliff Face of Courage, which is really about looking about what's really going on within ourselves, which is the awareness part of our own journey through leadership and leading. And of course, if we stay in the mud, I mean, mud is great, it's nutritious, but we can also thrash around and stir it all up. And pretty soon, if you're in a lot of mud and you're stirring it up, it becomes a swamp. And as we all like to say, another one of our vocabulary, a swamp, SWAMP, means that you're going to be stuck with a massive problem. SWAMP, which we'll quite like to declare. And then sort of getting out of that, climbing the cliff face of courage, and then we have other lands that you go through to, which ultimately lead to an inner conviction and courage. And then from there, it's a step to authenticity. Now, there are other ways of getting to courage, which is through a sort of shortcut, but what you see from the map, or not the map, the landscape of IDKN, is that ultimately, if you shortcut to confidence, it's kind of a fake. And if you're being a leader, it's kind of difficult to get from fake to authenticity in one step. So the question is, I suppose, do you want to do it like that? Or do you want to actually go through the process of becoming aware, learning, encouraging curiosity, and getting into the state of inner conviction, confidence, and ultimately authenticity? And do you want your team to be like that as well?
Mhm. I think what the process or the practice enables is seeing that there are more options than you first thought. Because generally, that's one of the things that sends us straight into the mud, is thinking something is a binary choice.
Yes.
I know it or I don't. It's right or it's wrong. This is what I should do. This is what I should not do. And that's really unrealistic, especially when you're thinking a landscape or an ecosystem. There is never one cause, one effect.
Sure.
So when you use the process and understand the landscape, you are able to see there are more options. And then when you take the time and you find the courage to reflect on those and choose one, consciously choose one, you know why you chose it, you know why it's a good idea, you know who should also be included to make it work, and therefore your confidence is very strongly grounded. It's the opposite of what you said, somebody saying, this is the great idea, let's do it, when it's a hollow idea. And we can recognize it. Humans can recognize inauthenticity, and
Yes.
and we can recognize what's the opposite of logic? Illogic.
Yeah.
We can recognize when an argument is illogical, and
Yes.
we don't believe the person believes it him or herself. So how would that influence anything more than probably a detachment? Oh, you can't trust that person.
Yeah.
I mean, recently, I think one other piece that I found interesting in exploring this is the idea of resilience.
Mm.
Often when we're thinking about making a choice where I don't know and then making a decision, what if it's the wrong one and hesitate and so on. I mean, humans one always anticipate the worst, so that helps us stay stuck. And
Yes.
we also have reluctance to pull the trigger or make the decision when we feel responsible. And that's such a paradox because a leadership practice is about responsibility.
Yes.
Responsibility for your choices for others, for the climate, the culture, and so on. So so resilience then, what happens if it's not right? This is one of the blocks. And I found that for me, what I discovered was resilience to me is related to risk.
Mm.
Resilience, the ability to adapt to variables in your surroundings. It comes from biology originally. And
Mm.
so, if there's no more of the resource around, an animal moves on or a plant dies. There has to be an adaptation to using less water or whatever it might be in order to be resilient to the environment. So resilience in our sense is um, I made a mistake. It wasn't the best decision, but we learn from it. We don't just bounce back, we bounce
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
So
Ah.
so
Yes.
with respect to risk, I was thinking, I have a good guardian angel because I've done a lot of silly things in my life because being so independent and know I want to do it my way and I want to do that, so I go and do it. And probably looking back, I probably put myself in some pretty risky places or chose to do things that weren't especially smart. But I could because I could always go home.
Mm.
I had support. So there is like a positive correlation between support and risk. And support can look like information, others do it, I've got experience, or I know somebody's got my back. And then that if I have that support, I can take the risk. And then if I make the mistake, I can also be pretty resilient in how I adapt. So
Yes.
this is another like thing embedded into IDKN. I think it makes it really rich.
Yeah, yeah, because we on the diagram that we have a lot of dotted lines, which means you can fall through them or pass through them in both directions. So, it's not a one-off. Oh, I've got a situation. I'm going to do this. It's a continuous learning because every action we have will have some change will happen. And now, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? And that's called growth, really. It could also possibly be demise if you really get into a situation where you really can't get out of it. But if you understand what the IDKN landscape gives you, it gives you, I think, more of a chance to get it right than it is to just be in permanent reaction, kicking up the mud in this and making a swamp and becoming, stuck with you know, an, the last problem. There's just bankruptcy or whatever it is. Um, Yes, stuck with a massive problem. So it's how do you continuously become unstuck, if you like. And I like the bounce forward bit as well. That's pretty cool. I think it's very visual thing about, oh, okay, how do we bounce forward rather than bounce back? Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting thing to look at too.
Well, this is all of this conversation illustrates that this is a practice that
Yeah,
isn't just learning about something cognitively. Okay, I understand, but it's actually experiencing it and tying it to your own situation, whatever comes up and how you deal with it. And we all know with practice things get easier and it becomes
yeah,
more a part of you.
yeah. and you can get quicker at it and quicker at it. I explained the IDKN principles to a lieutenant colonel in the British Army not long ago, and he was saying, well, gosh, yeah, I mean, who recognises a lot of it when he's under something he calls quite squarely effective enemy fire. You need to do something quickly, and panic is not. It's not in the box. You can't. Although we have that in our landscape, and what happens when you panic. But the point is that you get into bigger and bigger situations that you can deal with or have an idea about how to deal with, how to approach. But also you can see that with others and become aware of that. And then if they understand it as well, if you've got a whole team that understands this whole process, then like you and I, we developed this and went from one step to another. And we very often said to each other, gosh, I'm so in the mud over this, I really don't know where to go. And then we go, oh, okay, so what does the land say? Oh, now here I am. Okay, what's we do? Oh, we pause. And then what are we really looking at? What's really going on for you? And then you can see that going on for other people. I mean, if other people in the team actually become mutually supportive as well, then we think you can move forward and support each other in all sorts of places where resilience is really required.
If I had to actually distill it down to one thing, one
I'd like to hear this.
capacity, it's noticing. Because we often think of triggers as, okay, be aware of them so you don't have it, like they will ever go away. Because that trigger is what really starts the whole process off. If everything's cruising fine, you don't even question it, which kind of is another subject. But when you are, if you notice it and not try to shove it away, that's where great learning lies. So your triggers are actually there to teach you something.
Yeah.
And when you notice it, you can go into the whole process of why. Why am I triggered here? And what am I trying to protect? Generally, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. I mean, when I, years ago when I was doing quite a lot of personal development courses and things, the concept of codependence, aloofness, dominant, submissive, or in sovereignty, all came up, and I hadn't realised that my modus operandi under stress or under trigger was to go aloof, and I thought that meant become, but it actually means just distance yourself. It's the flight part of fight, freeze, fawn, whatever. And so, now knowing that, I still do it. That's still my preferred. Oh, whoa, I don't want let me get out of this, but it on one reflects on the thing that's happened. You go, okay, yeah, that's what I tend to do. Now, what else could I have done, or what can I do next time? Or more importantly, how can I now fix this so that it goes forward,
in a practical sense.
Yeah.
In a practical sense, what I often use in my own work is in the context of feedback or having difficult conversations.
Yes.
And ask why, you probably see some things that could be better, and you could, or even could be better, or need a caution about not doing that way again.
Mm-hmm.
And many times we don't give the feedback. We might notice it, but not the right time, or is this really my job, or I don't know how that person will react, or I don't know, do I have the skill to do it? But when we avoid it, we are missing the opportunity. So when asking why don't you, it really comes down to, what are you trying to protect? So if your reason is, I don't think it's really my job, what does that mean? What is that protecting? Maybe the relationship with somebody, because you're not really responsible, you don't have a dotted line with that person and you're responsible for that person's performance. You're just a team member.
Yes.
So it's not my job, or I don't know, this is kind of sticky and I don't know how this person will react. What if they start crying? What do I do? So
Mm.
then I'm trying to protect myself because I won't handle that situation well, I think.
Yeah.
So it's really so many things come down to what are you protecting? What are you avoiding? And in a relational sense, when you talk about going aloof, that already sends a message. I mean, I'm kind of opposite. When I get mad, you usually know it, and so it's clear. Where somebody who doesn't, the reaction is like, you don't even care. You know, here I am, all upset, and you don't even care.
Yes.
So so those sort of things come back to what I said. I would distill it down to noticing. When I
Mm.
notice that, that can also put us in a space of mud. And then
Yes.
I can also use the same process of, okay, so what do I do about this? And it takes some courage for me
Yeah. I
to
think
have
I
that
think I
conversation.
think really, I mean, what we're talking about is are we prepared to get into the mud with somebody
Yeah,
in the mud as well, and kind of,
yeah,
because you could either both sink and you're going to get messy, whatever. But can you
yeah,
use that as nutrition to say, and if you both understand the IDKN process and what's going on, unless it's something that's very acute or whatever, but you could I get together and say, look, do you want me to get in the mud with you on this? Because we're on to, and then then you've got a container, hopefully, that you can then go, okay, well, we know the next stage of this is see what's going on, and then get out into the garden of the power of the pause, where we can sit in the lovely sunshine, and then really kind of work out what's going on, get a wise person, coach, mentor, therapist, whatever, to friend come in, maybe if necessary, who also understands the process, or the landscape at least, um, and also know that the next stage is either you get back in the mud, or slipping through that dotted line again, or you go into you'll need to face the cliff face of courage, which is again looking at the emotions, or what you're experiencing, and being able to express that, or go, where do I, what's going on here. And of course, part of the reason we call it a cliff face is because whether it's 10 feet or 1,000 feet high, it can be, well, unless your weekend hobby is rock climbing, and seeing the Olympics recently about that, that's quite an amazing thing. But they all have in common, they all have a safety lane. So getting into that cliff face of courage, really, that's where the kind of I see my work, and I guess you see yours as well, is to beyond explaining the situation and this landscape, is to say, okay, work with us. Let us point out the handholds. Let us ask you the questions. Let us hold the safety rope for you while you scale this inner cliff face of courage. And 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 we promise that, all right, you might slip off and you might climb down again, you might back in the mud, but at the top of that particular cliff face, we hope that you will find the pastures of perspective, where you can look around and look down and see where you were in the mud, in the swamp, in reaction, what you would reacting to your other people, your own ego, the fight, flight, freeze, all of that, your anger, your grief, your depression, your fear, whatever that was going on. And then that helps you from there to move forward in the landscapes through into clarity and in a conviction and confidence, and ultimately authenticity. So that would be where we see the fruits of our work for the last 4 years in developing all this, coming to. And I think that might be an interesting or useful segue to say, hey, if you've listened this far, congratulations, well done. If you'd like to get involved in more conversation with us, let us know. We'd love to invite you. If you'd like to know about the IDKN landscape and the practice of leadership and how you get better, how you build your own awareness, your own leadership, ultimately going up to even corporate culture, change management, all sorts of things, which Kathleen here is an expert in, at least on the global side of things, not just around the corner, it's global. we'd love to invite you to get involved. Anything to finish off with, Kathleen?
I had the picture of mud wrestling in the sandbox box when you were, so maybe the only thing I'd finish off with is that it actually is a fun process.
I was just going to say that. Yes, yeah, we can create the fun in some point wherever, and actually, fun is a really contagious thing, isn't it? If you're having fun doing something, will you do more of it and get better and better? And then we hope that IDKN is a fun process by which you can, build your leadership muscle or bounce forward or you bring your I've already forgotten the phrase about organizational warming. Yeah, great, lovely. Well, that's been great fun chatting to you, Kathleen, with this. And as I say, if anybody else wants to get involved in these things, we have these talks once every couple of weeks or whatever, and love to have you along and contact us, which you can do at Geoff@idkn.org or Kathleen@idkn.org. Love to hear from you.
Thank you.